Our address of the emergency.
It's in Orange Tree Apartments, 25th Street. It's 20.
Yeah, give me the address. Ma'am, hello? Ma'am, I need the address. Ma'am? Ma'am, I can't send help if I don't know where to send them.
Our story begins August 2005 in the vibrant college town of Austin, Texas. Jennifer Cave was a 21-year-old woman who had been living in Austin for about 2 years. She was originally from Corpus Christi, where her mother, Sharon Cave, and stepfather, Jim Sedgwick, still lived. And by all accounts, Jennifer was a bright, ambitious young woman who was trying to build a life for herself in the capital city. Jennifer shared an apartment with her roommate, Denise Winterbottom, and she maintained an incredible close relationship with her mother. We're talking about the kind of mother-daughter bond where they spoke on the phone every single day. This detail becomes crucial to our story, so keep that in mind. Now on Monday, August 15th, 2005, Jennifer had some exciting news to share with her mum. She had landed an interview for a part-time position at an Austin law firm. And this wasn't just any job, this was the kind of opportunity that could set her up for a real career. Jennifer was nervous but optimistic about the interview scheduled for the next day. Tuesday, August 16th, turned out to be one of the best days of Jennifer's life. The interview went so well that not only did she get the part-time position, but the law firm was so impressed with her that they offered her full-time employment on the spot. Fair play, love. Can you imagine that feeling? Walking into an interview hoping for a part-time gig and walking out with a full-time career opportunity. Jennifer was over the moon. She called her mother Sharon immediately to share the incredible news. Sharon later testified that Jennifer was extremely excited by the prospect of this new job. This wasn't just excitement about having work, this was excitement about having a future and to build something meaningful. Now that evening at 8:30 p.m, Jennifer and Sharon had their final conversation. Jennifer was back at her apartment. She was doing laundry and preparing for what would be the first full day at the law firm. She was so excited that she told her mother. She was planning to wear the new pantsuit that Sharon had recently bought for her. It was supposed to be her power outfit for her first day as a professional. Jennifer was doing all the things that you do when you're starting in a new chapter in your life. She was organized, she was prepared, she was looking forward to tomorrow. She had no idea this conversation with her mother would be their last. Now to understand what happened next, we need to talk about Colton Pitonyak. Colton was 24 years old at the time of these events, and he had what you might call a complicated relationship with success and failure. Colton had actually started out as a success story. He graduated from high school in Arkansas in 2001 and earned an academic scholarship to the University of Texas. For a while, things looked promising, but college life introduced Colton to a world of drugs and alcohol that he couldn't handle. By December 2002, just a year into his college career, Colton was arrested for driving while intoxicated and suspended from the university. What followed was a downward spiral that lasted 2.5 years. He was in and out of school, bouncing between UT and the local community college, but he was drinking heavily and using drugs regularly. He rarely went to class. In the fall of 2004, things got worse when Colton was arrested for cocaine possession. As part of a plea agreement, he entered a residential drug rehab center. But here's the thing that tells you everything you need to know about Colton. He was released after just a month, and he started using drugs and drinking 2 days later. By the summer of 2005, his addiction had reached truly staggering levels. He testified that he was drinking a case of beer and a liter of vodka every single day. Let me repeat, a case of beer and a liter of vodka every day. That would kill most people. On top of that, he was taking Xanax and using cocaine. He wasn't just using drugs, he was also dealing them. This is the person that Jennifer considered a friend. See, she had met Colton in the summer of 2004, and despite his obvious problems, she maintained a friendship with him. Colton later described their relationship as really good friends and said Jennifer was his best friend. He claimed It wasn't romantic, just a close friendship where they could count on each other. But here's where things became complicated. See, around this time, Colton had also met a woman named Laura Hall. Laura was apparently infatuated with Colton, though he didn't return her feelings. She would come to his apartment and they would stay up and drink and do drugs together. Now, Laura Hall's name is going to become very important to this story. So, Tuesday night, August 16th, 2005, Jennifer had just had the best day of her professional life. She was at home doing laundry, talking to her mum about her new job, planning what to wear the next day. She was probably feeling like everything was finally coming together. At 9 p.m., however, Jennifer made a decision that would cost her everything. She called Colton. According to Colton's later testimony, Jennifer called to share her good news about the job. She was excited about getting promoted on her very first day and she wanted to celebrate. She asked Colton if he wanted to go downtown, get a drink, grab something to eat. He agreed, but only if Jennifer could pick him up. And here's what's crucial to understand about Colton's state that night. He had been drinking since 5 p.m. He had also taken several Xanax pills. This wasn't casual drinking. This was the kind of consumption that would leave most people unconscious. But for someone with Colton's tolerance, it was apparently just another Tuesday night. Jennifer picked up Colton and they headed to 6th Street in downtown Austin. And for those of you not familiar with Austin, 6th Street is the main entertainment district. It's where you go to bar hop, listen to music, and party. Now, several witnesses later testified that they saw Jennifer and Colton at various bars that night. Here's what's interesting though. Jennifer appeared to be sober. Multiple people noticed she didn't seem intoxicated at all. Colton, on the other hand, was clearly under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Some witnesses even heard him talking about purchasing cocaine throughout the evening. Jennifer stayed in contact with her friend Michael Rodriguez. She called him 3 times that night, and these phone calls give us best window into what was happening. The first call came at 10:30 p.m. Jennifer told Rodriguez that she was going to hang out with a friend named Colton. Rodriguez didn't know who Colton was, but Jennifer seemed fine. The second call came around midnight. This time, Jennifer told Rodriguez Colton was upset. She didn't elaborate on why, but something had clearly changed in Colton's mood. The third and final call came at 1 a.m. This call painted a disturbing picture. Jennifer told Rodriguez Colton was upset because he had lost his phone. And then it got worse. She said Colton had tried to break out the window of a parked car and that he was urinating on another vehicle. Rodriguez later testified Jennifer didn't sound like she was in trouble or anything, and he assumed Colton was intoxicated and acting stupid. He didn't know Jennifer's limbs would end up in the toilet, but I'll come on to that in a second. See, looking back at the phone call at 1 a.m., Jennifer's last known communication was at that time. Rodriguez's assumption was that Colton was just drunk. Now, what happened after that 1 a.m. phone call is something that only 2 people know for certain. One of them is dead. According to Colton's testimony, he remembered going to a restaurant on 6th Street. He bought a drink. After that, his memory is completely blank. He claimed that the combination of vodka and Xanax had caused a complete blackout, and that his next memory was waking up in his apartment the following morning. But here's what we know what happened. Based on the physical evidence and witness testimony, at some point during the early morning hours, Jennifer was shot and killed in Colton's apartment. The bullet passed through her right arm, re-entered her body through her ribs, passed through her right lung, and punctured her aorta, causing her death. It was a single shot that killed her instantly. The weapon was a .38 semi-automatic pistol that belonged to Colton. He had acquired this gun in 2005 from some guys who owed him money for drugs. Now, Colton claimed he had sold the gun to a friend of Laura named Jason, but that Jason had left it with him as collateral when he borrowed Colton's car. Whether Colton's claimed amnesia is real or convenient, we'll never know for certain, but what we do know is that when he woke up on the Wednesday morning, he discovered Jennifer's body in his bathroom, and this is where our story takes a horrifying turn. When he discovered Jennifer's body, he had a choice. He could call the police, tell them what happened, and face the consequences. It could have been an accident or a crime committed while he was blackout drunk, or he could try to cover it up. Colton chose to cover it up, and what followed was one of the most disturbing attempts to dispose of evidence in Texas history. See, instead of calling 911, he called Laura. He told her not to come to the apartment as she had planned, but Laura insisted on coming anyway. She arrived around 8 a.m. when Colton showed Laura Jennifer's body. Her response wasn't to call police or run away in horror. Instead, she said, "What are we going to do?" What they decided to do was dismember Jennifer's body. Let me be clear. Jennifer was a 21-year-old woman who had just gotten her dream job. She was someone's daughter, she was someone's friend, and these two muppets decided to cut her body into pieces and put it in the toilet. Colton and Laura began discussing how to cut up the body. Colton had a knife and a machete in his apartment. Laura apparently tried to use these tools, but she told Colton that what she was trying wasn't working. She needed some things. Now, later that Wednesday, Jennifer's mother was trying to reach her daughter, while her new employers were wondering why she hadn't shown up for work. Colton went shopping. He went to a hardware store a few blocks from his apartment and purchased a hacksaw. He got shop towels, latex gloves, dust masks, a 55-gallon drum liners, ammonia, carpet cleaner, and odor eliminator. To be honest, if it was me, I wouldn't even know you need to get that stuff. The store owner did ask him, "What are you getting a hacksaw for?" He said, "I need to cut up a turkey." Wow. The store owner later testified he could smell alcohol on Colton's breath, but that Colton didn't appear to be intoxicated. And think about that for a moment. Colton was coherent enough to drive to the store, make purchases, and lie convincingly about what he planned to do, all while there was a dead body in his apartment. After leaving the hardware store, Colton stopped at Burger King and ordered a hamburger, fries, and a drink. The remains of this meal were later found by police in his apartment. He was literally eating fast food while planning to dismember his friend's body. Back at the apartment, the gruesome work began. Jennifer's body was decapitated and her hands were cut off. The hacksaw was used to dismember her corpse. Her severed head and hands were placed in a plastic garbage bag, but the horror didn't end there. After Jennifer was already dead and dismembered, someone fired a second bullet into her head. The head had already been taken off, but they fired another bullet. What the hell? The medical examiner determined this was a post-mortem wound, meaning it already happened after she died. Colton denied firing the shot, which means Laura likely did it. And throughout this entire day, while this nightmare was unfolding in the apartment at the Orange Tree condominiums, Jennifer's mother Sharon became frantic. See, for her, Wednesday, August 17th started as what should have been one of the proudest days of Sharon's life. Her daughter was starting the first full day at a law firm. Jennifer was finally building the career and life that Sharon had always hoped for. But when Wednesday afternoon arrived, instead of getting on a phone call from Jennifer, Sharon got a call from William Thompson, one of the attorneys at the law firm. Thompson asked Sharon if she had spoken to Jennifer that day. When Sharon said no, Thompson delivered news that would begin every parent's worst nightmare. Jennifer hadn't come to work, she wasn't answering her phone, and someone from the firm had gone to her apartment. She wasn't there. Sharon immediately began calling Jennifer's phone, but all of her calls went to voicemail. For a mother who spoke to her daughter every single day, the silence was deafening. Sharon called Jennifer's cell phone service provider and obtained a list of numbers that had called or been called from Jennifer's phone. She started with Jennifer's last call and worked backwards. Sharon began calling the numbers that appeared most frequently, hoping to find someone who might know where Jennifer was. One of those numbers belonged to Michael Rodriguez, and this is where Sharon first learned about Colton. Rodriguez told Sharon about his 3 phone calls with Jennifer the night before. He explained that Jennifer had been with someone named Colton, and that this Colton person had been acting erratically, trying to break car windows and urinating on the floor. While Sharon was on the phone with Rodriguez, Colton called her cell phone. Remember, at this point, Colton had already discovered Jennifer's body and was in the process of dismembering it. Sharon asked Colton if he had seen Jennifer or talked to her. Colton lied and said no, but Rodriguez was still on Sharon's other phone, and he immediately said, "That's not true. She was with him," as in Colton. When Sharon confronted Colton with this information, he then changed his story. He admitted he had seen Jennifer downtown, but claimed he didn't know where she was now. Rodriguez, still listening, told Sharon he's lying. He was with her last night. He's lying. And think about this from Sharon's perspective. Her daughter's missing, and the last person known to be with her is lying about it. What is going on? Every parent's instinct would be screaming that something was terribly wrong. Sharon called Jennifer's roommate, Denise Winterbottom, who confirmed that Jennifer had been doing laundry when she went to bed Tuesday night, but was gone when she woke up on Wednesday. Jennifer's bed hadn't been slept in. Desperate Sharon began calling places in Austin hospitals. When she couldn't find any trace of Jennifer, she called the Austin police. But because Jennifer had only been missing for 24 hours, the police told Sharon it was too early to file a missing persons report. They did open a case file and took down Jennifer's information. And by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, Sharon was convinced something terrible had happened to her daughter. She called her husband Jim at work and told him there's something very wrong. There's something wrong with Jennifer. Sharon and Jim continued making phone calls throughout the evening, trying to find anyone who might have seen or spoken to Jennifer. Jim tried calling Colton, but he didn't answer. Jim left what he described as a stern message, telling Colton, "Call us back, we're looking for Jennifer." Around 7:30 p.m., Colton finally returned the call. Remember, this is while Jennifer's dismembered body is in his bathtub and some of the limbs are in the toilet. Sharon answered the phone and pleaded with him, "Colton, please, do you know anything about Jennifer?" Do you know what he said? He said, "I'm eating pizza with friends. Leave me alone. I don't know where she is." And then he hung up. This mother was begging for information about her missing daughter, and the person who had killed her was eating pizza and telling her to go away. So on Thursday morning, August 18th, Sharon and Jim called Austin police. They spoke to Detective Kathleen Hector in the missing persons office. Sharon told Hector everything that happened: Jennifer's failure to appear for work, the phone calls with Rodriguez, Colton, and all of Colton's lies and evasive behavior. Hector assured Sharon the police would check it out and would look for her license and see if there was anything like that in her car or on any parking lot. Sharon and Jim decided they couldn't just sit and wait for news. So they got in their car and drove to Austin, which was 3 hours away. They decided to look for Jennifer themselves. Soon, Detective Hector called Sharon with news that there was a breakthrough that was deeply troubling. Jennifer's car had been found near the University of Texas campus. This was the address where Colton lived. Sharon and Jim arrived in Austin around 4 p.m. and immediately drove to the Orange Tree condos at Rio Grande. They were joined by Sharon's other daughter, Vanessa, who had driven down from Dallas to help search. Now, the Orange Tree is a large condo complex, and they found Jennifer's car parked on the street. Colton's apartment was on the second floor. Hector had left business cards on both the car and the apartment door. Sharon, Jim, and Vanessa spent about an hour at the apartment complex. They knocked on Colton's door and windows, calling out Jennifer's name, but there was no response. The apartment appeared empty. After an hour of getting no response, they decided to go to a hotel, but Sharon had a spare key to Jennifer's car, and she made a decision that shows just how desperate she was becoming. She drove Jennifer's car to the hotel, hoping that if Jennifer came out and saw that her car was missing, that the first thing she would do is call me or call the police. While at the hotel, Sharon called assistance for Arkansas. She had learned that Colton was from Arkansas and that she had seen a car with Arkansas license plates. She managed to reach Colton's father. Sharon told Colton's father her daughter was missing and the last person to be with her was Colton. So Colton's father provided information that confirmed Sharon's worst fears. Colton had called and asked if he could take Jennifer to dinner and use his mother's credit card. This confirmed Colton and Jennifer had definitely been together that night, despite Colton's initial denials. Realizing she might have made a mistake by moving Jennifer's car, Sharon and Jim returned to the Orange Tree. Sharon drove Jennifer's car back and parked it exactly where she found it. They knocked on Colton's door again, but still no response. Hector had told him there was nothing more police could do. So Sharon called the police again. Officer Salinas was dispatched to the Orange Tree, arriving at 8:30 p.m. Sharon told Officer Salinas that her daughter was missing. She believed Jennifer might be inside the apartment. Salinas examined both Jennifer's car and Colton's car, and he knocked on the apartment door. He was told that the apartments were individually owned, and there was no building manager with a master key. And after speaking to his supervisors, Salinas told Sharon and Jim that he was not authorized to force his way into the apartment. Jim asked what would happen if he forced entry himself. Salinas warned him that he could be charged with criminal trespassing. Jim then asked if the police would be willing to enter the apartment if he hired a locksmith. Salinas said no. So Salinas left the crime scene, leaving Sharon and Jim standing outside, where their daughter's dismembered body lay in the bathtub. After Salinas left, Sharon and Jim were facing every parent's nightmare. They were convinced their daughter was in danger, possibly inside the apartment they were standing outside of. Sharon later testified, "We were desperate. We didn't know what to do. The police were telling us that they were sorry, they couldn't help us." She believed it was necessary to get inside the apartment because it's the only thing she had of where Jennifer might be. So then Sharon and Jim made a decision that would change everything. They called a locksmith. The locksmith came to the apartment and attempted to open the door but was unsuccessful. When he left, Sharon and Jim stood outside the apartment not knowing what to do next. That's when Sharon noticed one of the windows was cracked. She later testified, "I went over with my fingernail and chipped the glass out a little bit." After making a small hole in the window pane, Sharon used a temple piece from a broken pair of sunglasses to open the window lock. Jim then opened the window and prepared to climb into the apartment. As he entered through the window, Jim called out, "I'm here to help. Please don't hurt me. Please don't shoot me. I'm looking for you, Jennifer." He had a flashlight in his hand. Jim began to search the apartment. The room was in complete disarray. He checked the couch, the bed, and the kitchen area, but found no one. Jim found a light switch and turned it on. At that point, he smelled something. Jim walked down a short hallway toward the bathroom. He opened the door and the smell hit him. He shone his light in there and he saw a body in the bathtub. What Jim saw in the bathroom was beyond anything a parent should ever have to witness. He then started yelling. He kept saying, "Call 911, call 911. He immediately identified that there was a decapitated body. He was seeing that and he saw the hacksaw lying there. So he went to the front door and unlocked the front door and went out. While he was running out, Sharon said, "Is it her? Is it her?" And he said, "I think so." So they had a 911 operator on the phone. Jim said, "I've got a body in the bathtub. Something's in the toilet. I really need some help." Jim went back into the apartment and returned to the bathroom. He testified that he couldn't positively identify her, but she had this kind of greenish dress that he recognized. Sharon wanted to go into the apartment, but Jim wouldn't let her. He said, "No, you can't see it." Sharon testified when she kept asking if it was Jennifer, he kept saying, "Maybe I saw her feet." He of course didn't want to say yes because that would destroy her. After all, a mother's desperate search for her missing daughter had ended in the most horrific way. Now, Officer Richard Barberia and his partner, Chris Clark, were on a routine patrol in the campus area. They were dispatched to the intersection of the apartments. Initially, the information they received was confusing. They were told, "Go to the condo. A woman in apartment 8 was reported to be overdosed and in trouble." When they arrived, they found apartment 8 and began pounding on the door. But then they noticed ambulances and fire trucks arriving. Realizing they had been given the wrong apartment number, Barberia and Clark went to the correct location. Officer Barberia was still under the impression that they were dealing with an overdose. As he approached the apartment, he met Jim Sedgwick. Barberia immediately assumed he knew the woman who was injured. Jim told Barberia the female was dead and she was inside. But Barberia testified that Jim's statements had no meaning to me at the time because I didn't see the victim as of yet. Following a group of firefighters, Officer Barberia entered the apartment and he noticed it was messy and unkempt, like a typical college apartment. Something was wrong. When he entered the bathroom, he found something that no amount of police could have prepared him for. There was a female body with the head and hands missing. It was propped up to the bathtub facing the doorway, and he looked down to the side and he saw the hands and the head in the toilet. Barberia noticed a small hacksaw on the body's chest, and he could see portions of flesh and blood. It was used to cut the body. He also saw a plastic garbage bag on the floor. He didn't bother looking at it because he knew the shape inside the bag. There were body parts in there. And after making sure nobody else was in the apartment, Barberia and Clark secured the scene and contacted homicide detectives. The body in Colton's bathtub was Jennifer Cave. So, the medical examiner's findings painted a clear picture of what happened, and it was even more disturbing than the crime suggested. Jennifer's life was taken by a single gunshot wound. The bullet passed through her right arm and re-entered her body through the ribs. It then passed through her right lung and punctured her aorta, which caused her death. The bullet was found lodged just under the skin on the left side of her back, but the gunshot wasn't the end of Jennifer's ordeal. After she was dead, someone inflicted numerous stab wounds on her body. There were 18 in total, and another cluster of 10 on the left shoulder and right breast. The medical examiner testified all of these wounds were inflicted after her death. Colton, what the hell were you doing? The dismemberment was also post-mortem. Jennifer's head and hands were cut off after she was already dead. Perhaps most disturbing of all, a second bullet was found in her head. This bullet had entered through the severed neck and traveled upward, lodging in the cranial vault. The medical examiner testified this was also post-mortem. The 2 bullets found in Jennifer's body were fired from the same pistol that was found in Colton's car. 3 cartridge casings fired from the pistol were found in the apartment. The 3rd bullet was never recovered. In addition to the bloody hacksaw found on Jennifer's body, a knife and a machete stained with Jennifer's blood was found in the apartment, and the physical evidence painted a clear picture. Jennifer had been shot, then her body had been stabbed repeatedly, dismembered, and further desecrated with a second gunshot. Now, while Jennifer's family was discovering the body, Colton and Laura were already on the run. Several witnesses had seen Jennifer and Colton at bars a few days before. Jennifer appeared sober, Colton was under the influence. To further add some confusion, on the Wednesday morning at 3 a.m., Colton had gone to his neighbor Nora's apartment. He told her that he had just been in a fight with some Mexican guys and there had been an exchange of gunfire. Nora had heard no gunshots and didn't believe Colton, though she did notice what appeared to be a smudge of blood on his forearm. She testified, "I could tell he had been drinking, so I just thought he was rambling on some story he made up." On Wednesday afternoon, while Sharon was frantically calling hospitals, still looking for her daughter, Colton was at the hardware store buying dismemberment supplies. The store owner remembered him because of the unusual combination of items he purchased, and because he claimed he was going to use the hacksaw to cut up a turkey. That same afternoon, Scott Engel, who had lived with Jennifer earlier in 2005 and was her friend, received a call from Sharon. Sharon told him Jennifer was missing. Engel called Colton and left a message. Colton returned Engel's call within 15 minutes. Colton told Engel he hadn't seen Jennifer since having dinner with her on Tuesday. Engel told Colton Jennifer's car was parked at his apartment and that more than likely the cops would be arriving shortly. This is where he panicked, he started throwing some clothes in a bag, and he got out of the apartment. So he and Laura left Austin that night in Laura's car. They drove to Del Rio, then crossed into Mexico and made their way to Piedras Negras. They checked into a motel on Friday, August 19th. For 4 days, while Jennifer's family was grieving and planning a funeral, Colton and Laura were hiding in Mexico. They were finally arrested at the motel by Mexican police Tuesday, August 23rd. They were turned over to U.S. Marshals. When Marshal Vincent Bellino told Colton what he was being arrested for, Colton said, "I know exactly what this is about. You think?" So, in 2007, January, this case went to trial. Colton made the decision to testify on his own behalf. His testimony provided insight into his state of mind, though it raised as many questions as it answered. He admitted to severe substance abuse, and by the summer of 2005, he was consuming large amounts of alcohol and drugs. He mentioned a case of beer and a liter of vodka every day, plus Xanax and cocaine. He was also dealing drugs to support his habit. He testified he had acquired the gun after getting into a fight for some guys when they owed him drug money. He claimed he never loaded the weapon and threw away the ammunition. In August, he said he sold the pistol to a friend named Jason, but Jason had left it with him as collateral when he borrowed Colton's car. And regarding the night Jennifer died, Colton testified Jennifer called him that evening. She wanted to celebrate her new job. They went downtown for drinks. He admitted that the time Jennifer arrived, he had already been drinking. They went to 6th Street, they were bar hopping, and he remembered going to a restaurant where he bought a drink. After that, his memory was completely blank. The combination of vodka and Xanax caused a complete blackout. His next memory was when he woke up and he found her in the apartment. But then the question remained, okay, you see this apartment, why didn't you call police? He said he panicked. He couldn't remember what happened the night before. He wasn't thinking straight. So he thought, you know what? I'm going to dismember this body. I mean, it makes no sense. Unless, of course, you are the one that killed her. He did acknowledge that he may have been the one that took her life, though he could not remember doing so. since he was the only other person in the apartment when she died. This admission would prove fatal to his defense. Defense attorney Roy Minton attempted to portray his client as a drug-addled fool who somehow shot his friend Jennifer in a delusional, drunken stupor. The defense theory was that the shooting was an accident, a product of Colton's mind clouded by drugs and alcohol. A forensic psychiatrist testified for the defense that excessive use of alcohol or depressants can result in blackouts or periods of amnesia. This supported Colton's claim that he generally couldn't remember. Colton insisted on the witness stand that he remembered nothing of the fatal shooting. Even more surprising, he claimed he had few memories of the horror that followed. He testified that Laura had carved up Jennifer's body, saying, "I wouldn't have done it. Jennifer was my best friend." However, the prosecution had a different story. You gotta think about it. Why would he take her life anyway? What was the motive? They had no romantic relationship, so why do it? Well, according to them, prosecutor Bill Bishop suggested the motive was about money. Colton, who had been dealing and using drugs, was in dire straits. He wanted Jennifer to bail him out. When she refused, he murdered her. The prosecution showed that Colton's actions immediately after Jennifer's death were not those of someone who blacked out. Remember, he went to his neighbor Nora's house, told her there was some kind of gunfight, but she never heard any gun noises. And to prosecutors, they argued this showed Colton was conscious and already trying to explain away the sound of gunshots, trying to cover his tracks. And phone records showed that Colton exchanged messages with Laura Hall in the early morning hours. They also pointed out Colton was coherent enough on Wednesday to go to the hardware store, purchase dismemberment supplies, lie convincingly to the store owner about needing a hacksaw, and then stop at Burger King for lunch. These were not the actions of someone still in a blackout. Most damning of all, the physical evidence contradicted Colton's testimony that Laura Hall had done the dismemberment alone. His DNA was all over the machete and bathroom. The prosecution argued Colton shot Jennifer on purpose, then immediately began covering his tracks. So, on Monday, January 29, 2007, after hearing all the evidence, the jury deliberated on Colton's fate. The jury found Colton guilty of knowingly and intentionally murdering Jennifer. They rejected the defense theory this was an accident or a crime committed during a blackout. On the same day, the jury recommended a 55-year prison sentence for Colton. Laura was initially sentenced to 10 years. She was released in 2018. 55 years, he should have got life. 55 years is basically life. As for Laura, she was initially sentenced to 10 years. She was released in 2018. Personally, I don't really buy the whole money, he had drug debts or whatever. It just doesn't make sense to me. I didn't know the guy, obviously, but with the vibe of the story, it doesn't feel right. I just think he got drunk. Maybe he tried to get intimate with her. She rejected him, and he may have retaliated in a rejected rage. That to me makes more sense.
There will not be a new trial for a man convicted of a West Campus killing. An appeals court rejected Colton Pitonyak's bid for a new trial. He's spending 55 years in prison for the 2005 murder of Jennifer Cave. Police found her body dismembered inside of a West Campus apartment. Pitonyak and his girlfriend Laura Hall were later arrested. She is serving time for tampering with evidence now. Pitonyak's attorney said he deserved a new trial because Hall made a jailhouse confession to Cave's murder. But the appeals court judges called that confession immaterial. Pitonyak's attorney is considering whether to appeal to the Supreme Court.
Sentencing trial when a jury handed Hall the maximum sentence possible less than 2 hours ago now. The victim's family was in the courtroom today to hear that jury deliver that sentence, and David Scott was sitting right there with them. He joins us now live with their reaction. David.
Leslie, as we saw briefly a moment ago, the most emotional person in the courtroom when the verdict was read was from Sharon Cave Sedgwick, the victim's mother. She bent her head over into her lap and began sobbing, patted on the back by her husband. The Halls, on the other hand, the parents of the defendant, immediately stood up and bolted wordlessly from the courtroom. Feelings were so intense about this retrial that there were fully 10 sheriff deputies, some of them rather beefy, scattered around the courtroom to maintain order. If the Halls had little to say afterwards, the Sedgwicks had plenty.
It's really disappointing because my daughter is innocent. I don't care what the system's saying out here. I've been talking to other lawyers out here, and they all say this stuff is kind of 40% of the people that are in the penitentiary are innocent, so.
You still feel she's innocent?
Oh, I know she is.
I hate the word closure. I hate that word. Satisfied, you know, how can you be satisfied when your child is gone, when your child is dead? That there is no satisfaction. Do I feel like justice has been done? Do I feel like the system has worked? Yes. And I think that's what we all have to strive for when you have something like this, is that it may not be the very best system, but it's a pretty damn good one.
And I asked Sharon Sedgwick if she had any thoughts or words for Laura Hall. She gave me a one-word answer: no. But the Sedgwicks do make one vow. They say that if Laura Hall or Colton Pitonyak ever come up for a parole hearing, they will be there. At the Justice Center, David Scott, KXAN, Austin News.
And to read more about Laura Hall's new sentence, including minute-by-minute updates of what happened in the courtroom today, go to our website, kxan.com.